Good morning and welcome to Sunday service. Today, we'll be having a look at the beliefs and practices of the church, observing personal integrity, and seeing what it is, how it works, and why it will be something that will be important to have. Then also we'll be going into the topic for this Sunday. So we see children running around and enjoying life, but have you ever took into consideration that they too have something that they are striving for? Well, we'll take a look at what the goals of a child are so that we can work with them to attain their goal. Let us start with the reading of the Creed of the Church of Scientology. We of the church believe that all men of whatever race, color, or creed were created with equal rights, that all men have inalienable rights to their own religious practices and their performances, that all men have inalienable rights to their own lives, that all men have inalienable rights to their sanity, that all men have inalienable rights to their own defense, that all men have inalienable rights to conceive, choose, assist, or support their own organizations, churches, and governments, that all men have inalienable rights to think freely, to talk freely, to write freely their own opinions, and to counter or utter or write upon the opinions of others, that all men have inalienable rights to the creation of their own kind, that the souls of men have the rights of men, that the study of the mind and the healing of mentally caused ills should not be alienated from religion or condoned in non-religious fields, and that no agency less than God has the power to suspend or set aside these rights, overtly or covertly. And we of the church believe that man is basically good, that he is seeking to survive, that his survival depends upon himself and upon his fellows and his attainment of brotherhood with the universe. And we of the church believe that the laws of God forbid man to destroy his own kind, to destroy the sanity of another, to destroy or enslave another's soul, to destroy or reduce the survival of one's companions or one's group. And we of the church believe that the spirit can be saved, and that the spirit alone may save or heal the body. Now, let's have a look at personal integrity. How would that relate to the creed? How would that relate to the topic of this Sunday? How can you use personal integrity? What is it even anyway? So, you'll hear me say observe quite often. But what does it mean to observe? The definition of observe is a verb itself. To observe is an action word. It's something that you do. And it means to notice or perceive something and register it as being significant. This comes from the Old French, observer, then from Latin, observere, to watch, which would be the ob, towards, servere, attend to, or look at. So now, let's have a look at personal integrity. What is true for you is what you have observed yourself. And when you lose that, you have lost everything. What is personal integrity? Personal integrity is knowing what you know. What you know is what you know. And to have the courage to know and say what you have observed. And that is integrity. And there is no other integrity. Of course, we can talk about honor, truth, all these things, these esoteric terms. But I think they'd all be covered very well if what we really observed was what we observed. That we took care to observe what we were observing, and that we always observed to observe. And not necessarily maintaining a skeptical attitude, or a critical attitude, or an open mind, but certainly maintaining sufficient personal integrity and sufficient personal belief and confidence in self and courage that we can observe what we observe and say what we have observed. Nothing in Dianetics and Scientology is true for you unless you have observed it, and it is true according to your observation. That is all. So, Now you have it. Personal integrity is knowing what you know. So, look at the things that you know, and look at the things that you can know through your own observation as we go into the topic for today. Now, as you hear these things, you could also reflect upon your own life and your own childhood as you hear about the child's goals. The child in this society is denied any responsible position of any kind whatsoever. With his first breath, he begins to be denied the independence for which he as an organism seeks. After that, he is cared for one way or the other. He is fitted into some sort of mold with which people think is very desirable. But his independence, his freedom of action, is being cut off in all directions. He has, fortunately for him, one goal: to grow up. He might have minor goals, but this goal of growing up is his one saving grace. He can salvage himself on that alone, unless he is carefully taught not to grow up. If he is taught sufficiently that his growing up is something that will result in a bad state of affairs for him, and that the desirable thing to do is remain a child, he has been robbed of the one goal which would carry him forward. You cannot overestimate the effect this has on a child. You look around in the society and you will find that children who have received too large a bonus for being children are those who are progressing least satisfactorily. All the concentration in the whole family is given to the child, and the child is given importance as a child way out of relationship to importance as an adult. In other words, if little Willie suddenly runs into the room, knocks over a lamp, and spills some sticky pineapple juice on a guest suit, why, that's just fine. We pat little Willie on the head and we take him out to give him some more pineapple juice because he lost it. And then we say, well, he's only a little child. He doesn't know any better. And this general line of training toward children gives a very high priority to remaining a child. And actually, who would want to be an adult in such a family? So the child is left with the feeling that he wants to stay being a child. This is not rare today. It was rare 70 years ago, but it is not rare today. So now we look over this goal the child has, the goal of growing up, and we find out how he gets the idea that growing up is desirable. He only has one model about this, that is to say, the grown-up. He knows he's growing. Physiologically, he has this big goal. He has enormous energy. He has good repair and healing qualities. He is geared up to be very energetic and active, and he has a goal. And he looks around him and he says, now, let's see, I'm growing up. Now, what will I be when I grow up? And his answer is, I will be an adult. He looks around and he takes a look at the adults around him. Here's Mama, whose whole concentration must be a sort of waiting maid to children. Well, we don't want to be Mama. She never has any fun. And we look at Papa, and he drags home from work and he snarls and maybe gets a chance to look at the paper and dinner and so forth, and he finally goes to bed and he complains about the kids because they're in his road. And we look at Papa and he isn't very elegant either. Well, that's another grown-up. By this time, a kid starts to scratch his head and he says, what is this being grown up? I want to stay a kid because look, we get waited on, we get food, we get clothing, we have no responsibility whatsoever, and to the dickens with these adults. That's about, actually, what you would get if you sum this thing up. Now maybe we are talking along the lines with which you don't particularly agree. But we can say this, that a child is faced with a very strange world. In this world, the child has foisted off on him other concepts. Continually, people are forcing upon him things which actually don't make very good sense. They don't. If you could ever detach yourself from being attached to this thing we call reality, in this society and step back and take a look at it for what it is, we will see that a child, much like Viewpoint, he knows that he likes to run and play, and he has the idea that other people ought to like running and playing. And then we look at this large section of society, and it believes that running and playing is very wicked indeed, or it's not done, or something of the sort. Oh, it's all right to go to a golf course and push a little white ball around, but don't really have a good time. The child is continually confronted with these inconsistencies. It is a completely insane world as far as he's concerned when he first steps into it. There's all sorts of strangenesses with which he is confronted. He is confronted with the strangeness of his own complete unimportance. That's the first thing. Everybody has agreed that all a child is supposed to do is go and play or go to school and listen. And get rid of him over here and get rid of him over there and push him around over here someplace and say, well, yeah, you can go sit down and watch television, but don't make any noise. He isn't supposed to talk. He isn't supposed to walk. He isn't supposed to sit. He's pretty anchored. In spite of his own vitality, overcomes it. So there is this insidious line in the society which teaches the child not to grow up by, 1, teaching him that it pays a high bonus to be a child, and 2, that grown-ups don't have any fun, so why be a grown-up? He's confronted with that on an educational level. And he is also confronted with people who don't like children and who are willing to put off on this child all manner of barbarisms on the excuse that it obtains loyalty and discipline. It is absolutely wonderful to watch children who have not been disciplined. They're actually not bad children. If you want to get a real thorough, bad, wicked kid, you get one that's been really disciplined. They fixed him up. He knows now just exactly what he's supposed to do. And as long as he's got breath in his body, he's be doggoned it if he do it. In other words, you've set up the whole being as a turbulence. If you see some child who is making accidental breakages, odds and ends of disobediences, strange oversights, you can be very well aware of the fact that here's a child that has been pretty badly badgered of some quarter of another. But the child who has never been punished is in pretty good shape. This child will go along for a long time. And regardless of what somebody may say about how neurotic a person must be in order to succeed, I'm afraid, as we look around the world, we find that the preponderance of successful people in this world stem exactly from that sort of a background. All of the native independence, the native desires to grow up and carry on are left in that child undisturbed. When one talks about a spoiled child, he is talking about something else entirely different. One has to really label and evaluate what is a spoiled child before he can understand the act of spoiling children. The way children are spoiled is to rob them of their independence of action. That is the way a child is spoiled. Not by loving the child, not by giving the child things. These things don't spoil a child. You could give a child an Empire State Building and it would not spoil him. But robbing him of his independence of action will. The first way is the method of preventing him from making his own decisions by inflicting punishment upon him when his decisions lead him into trouble. In other words, no real adjudication. This child makes up his mind he's going to do something and he gets punished. And then there's the other one, where the child is continually informed how nice everybody is to him and how the world is all run for him and how ungrateful he is and so forth. And yet give him everything and then tell him that it's being done for him. In other words, that's another way to rob him of his independence of action, is to sort of buy him off so he doesn't dare act independently. The punishment method will result eventually in a terrific rebellion on the part of the child. He has nothing to compensate for punishment. nagging, and so forth, so he'll just fly in the face of fate and probably very irrationally become a rebel against the whole system. The other method of buying the child, of saying, well, now, here are your new shoes, Johnny. Get that? Your new shoes? I'm going to buy you new shoes, and they are now your new shoes. Johnny says, gee, thanks. I think I'll go play with Roger. And he puts on his new shoes. Oh, no! No, Johnny. Those are your best shoes. You are only to wear those on Sunday. His shoes? Oh, yeah. And next week sometime, but I'm so good to you, Johnny. I'm always buying you everything you want, new shoes and everything else. Well, by this time, his wits on an educational level just start to spin slightly because obviously they weren't his shoes. In other words, he is deprived of his pride of ownership. He is deprived of his independence of action simply by having them bought away from him all the time. The spoiled child is the child whose decisions have been interrupted continuously and who is robbed of his independence. No child ever was spoiled by affection, by sympathy, by kindness, by understanding, or even by indulgence. Scientology contains a wealth of information about the raising of children, and in today's world, it's information that should be known for the good of society. Study the booklet Children, where much of it can be found. You can also find this information in the comprehensive Scientology handbook. Arm yourself with this knowledge and help make a better world. So, now with that, you can observe these things for yourself, and then you can take a fresh new look at how a child operates and how you operate with children. So from there, you can help a child attain the goals in which he has for himself. Because we all know that a child would like to grow up so that he can do big boy things. Now, I look forward to seeing you all next Sunday as we're going to be enjoying the start of a brand new month. And we'll be ending Sunday service with the Scientology prayer for total freedom. May the author of the universe enable all men to reach an understanding of their spiritual nature. May awareness and understanding of life expand so that all may come to know the author of the universe. And may others also reach this understanding which brings total freedom. At this time, we think of those whose liberty is threatened, of those who have suffered imprisonment for their beliefs, of those who are enslaved or martyred, and for all those who are brutalized, trapped, or attacked. We pray that human rights will be preserved so that all people may believe and worship freely, so that freedom will once again be seen in our land. Freedom from war and poverty and want. Freedom to be, freedom to do, and freedom to have. Freedom to use and understand man's potential, a potential that is God-given and God-like. And freedom to achieve that understanding and awareness that is total freedom. May God let it be so. Thank you for coming to Sunday service, and I look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Have a great day.